Um, we have 3 board members that are participating via Zoom. Toby, Prout, and Tom DeVar are all participating via Zoom. So I'll call the meeting to order. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Jason Lentz, and I'm representing the environmental interest. And I'm the CEO of Creek Run, and I've been the chairman now for my 3rd meeting, I think.
I'm Nevis Vijay with Heartland Environmental. I'm principal of Heartland, and I represent the environmental consultant.
I'm Nancy Kim, board counsel for my end.
Mark Aldis, I'm here representing the property and casualty insurance industry.
Kim Logan, Treasurer State's Office.
Peggy Dorsey, Assistant Commissioner, Office of Land Quality, IDO representing the commission.
So I'll let Trout introduce himself.
Trout Mosier, National Gas, representing the marketing and convenience store industry.
Tom Navarre with Family Express and representing the convenience store industry.
And this,
Toby Rickaball with Marathon Petroleum, representing the midstream section.
okay, thanks everybody for being here today, and for the board members that are all participating. We'll get started with fund administrator's report.
You have the slide. Yeah. I go ahead and talk about Kevin for that. So, there's not a lot of slides in this one. So once we're meeting forward, there's a little just to update on. This one is going to cover up to the end of the fiscal year. Kind of put a nice fine point on that. I did not include the historical because it's in all the other packets, and there's sort of an extra background. So obviously history has changed from 2017 to 2020. So if you need that, it's available in the previous ones. So again, this covers up till the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th is the end of the fiscal year from the state. You could have the next slide. Yeah. So I think we've gone over a lot of what these mean and what they're for, and why the appropriation is less than what our revenue is, and things of that sort. If anybody needs any questions or refreshers on that, go ahead and try to give you a heads up on that. The big one is just not necessarily for you all, for anybody listening. The reason why our appropriation is less than revenue is because every year is just the way the state does budgets. They always require an appropriation even if you have a separate revenue stream. So that's why it's always a little bit different. It doesn't go anywhere else. It will fall back into the fund. So if we have a revenue that's over what we're appropriated and what we spend, it all back to the as of the end of the year, so our revenue actually, the inspection fee, I want to highlight that. So it's almost 46 million. That's actually, it was much better than what I anticipated and much better than what was forecasted nationally. Overall, we're doing much better as far as revenue for funds that are designed like this. We derive it on the penny per gallon or a couple cents per gallon tax. Like we do, we're only in the COVID years, we're between 5 and 8%. Maybe 1 year we get 10%, but I don't think that's true. Between 5 and 8% lost revenue year on year. Some of these other states were, looking at 20, 25% reductions in revenue. So overall, I think it's a really good sign for us. Reasons can vary as to why. I assume it's because we were still shipping. A lot of people were still buying fuel and crossing state lines and driving to the state filling up here. So overall, I think that's a pretty positive sign of this year. Ending fund balance, as you can see down at the end, is about 148 million, with a little bit of additional change. That's an increase of approximately 25 to 30 million from last year's ending balance. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I assume there's going to be some questions. If you want to get into now or wait to do. So you, Jason.
We can basically,
Okay, sounds good. Let me go to the next slide there. Again, this is just a breakout on the monthly payouts versus revenues, and comparing the previous years. You know, not a whole lot to really explain there. I will say that they're in the next month, so July, so the first month of this fiscal year, we had a little bit of a discrepancy between our data and the finance data. And we were able to figure that out. So we had one claim that was roughly $1.2 million from one person, literally one person submitted for the whole cost of remediation for the site. It got hung up with the auditor's office or our accounting, and then got caught in the audit for free. So pretty much they say it's the last 2 weeks of June, but it kind of bleeds forward a little bit more into that closer to the first week of June. The auditor's office freezes, they don't want to pay anything out. So you get caught in that, you're going to the next fiscal year. So that's what happened with that one. It was reimbursed in early July. So all the numbers match after that. As far as the Petroleum Trust Fund, I did receive some updated numbers from IFA that was put in this agenda. I will get those together and send that to all of you guys so you have them. Nothing new, continued success, and their averages are approximately the same, a little less than 200,000 per site. All right, so our reported incidents. So we're overall about 134 totally reported. 95 of those were confirmed, 39 were still suspected. That 95 number could increase depending on the investigation of suspected releases. So obviously we just don't know yet whether or not they are confirmed. So that number could increase over time, but definitely not over 134. We can call 39 confirmed. I was just talking to Chris. It seems like we're pretty consistent now between 120 and 160 releases per year. It's just going to vary depending on what's going on, but I kind of feel like we're going to end up right about that 151. The eligible releases is a little bit tougher. As we know, most releases now that are reported should be eligible as long as you meet your provision portal requirements of that nature. But we're also finding that some of these releases are much smaller, getting cost sooner, and don't hit the deductible, so we never get an eligibility application. Right, they're closing out for $15,000. It's kind of an issue for me and also for you all. In my national reporting to the EPA, they always come up with why these people submit. The answer is we don't know because we don't require that submission and we don't have a way to track it in our database. One of the new things that the EPIC database is going to allow us to do is capture that. So even for sites that are reported and completed under the 15,000, we're going to try to collect that data because as far as I'm concerned, I think that should be the overall average cost of closure. We have the really high ones that bring it up, but we don't have the really low ones to kind of average that out. So we're finding new ways to include some of those numbers to help give us a better idea of what that average cost of closure is in the state.
not all these releases would have come from, necessarily came from underground storage tank, correct?
So these are all that would be considered regulated underground storage tanks. So it doesn't mean that they all would be eligible. Some of them, missed the reporting deadlines, but some of them, for whatever reason, just didn't report it to them. I don't know why, explain why that happens, but it still does. And then some of them, like I said, they don't confirm. So they're just suspected releases. So what number of those 39 end up being confirmed, we don't know. It could be 100%. It's
When a nozzle pops off of a diesel, you have diesel, surface diesel spill of 100 gallons. You're not including it in your list, even though somebody may call and report.
It would be, that's actually a good question. No, yeah, Tim says no, those would be. But a lot of, the suspected releases, people who work and they smell gas at a gas station, smell gas. So sometimes we get those suspected releases reported. And it's a big nothing at all. I apologize, I'm trying to work on the cold beer, so if I keep sniffling a lot. You can go ahead to the next one, Kevin, please. All right, so, again, here we have the amount requested of the previous fiscal year, which is about 15.7 million. The amount reviewed was 17.8 million, amount approved about 12.7. And then the amount reimbursed is 11.7. I think I tried to do a pretty good job of explaining why those numbers can be different. If anybody has any questions as to why it doesn't look exactly right, I can try to explain that a little bit more. The basic gist of it is, the amount requested versus the amount approved is going to be different from, it's not necessarily just denials, it could be, removal of the deductible. And sometimes when, especially in that last year in June, we have some that were approved in our system that had not been reimbursed from the auditors yet, if that makes sense, because they have up to 30 days to disperse that. So that's some of the reasons for some of those discrepancies.
Between approved and reimbursed? Is that
Yes.
where your discrepancy is?
Approved and reimbursed, that could be, again, that could be the auditor's office thing, it could be removal of the deductible, it could be some of these sites we have still aren't 100% eligible because they've done the old rules and things of that sort. Yes. Any other questions on those?
What do you attribute and thank you and congratulations on getting the review time down.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to, less claims or?
No,
The
we
office? or-
we've found that we've got a triage approach for trying to prevent, first of all, we worked off the backlog and it's kind of a lagging indicator, right? So those numbers are going in when they're finalized, right? So once we say it's approved, then that goes into the pot for the average. So we had a lot of really high day number ones in that backlog, and that's where approving those are numbers don't know about, much like the cost of putting them. So we worked backlog down rather substantially. We had it below 10 at one point a couple of months ago, and losing more staff started to tick up a little bit more. But we've also developed a triage process where we're trying to set some apart before they get the backlog and reimbursing those, so we're not stacking on top, right? So we're kind of doing it that way to try to separate the two. We have them working on the backlog and then also some folks working on preventing these kind of later ones from getting on that backlog. So yeah, that's basically it. That's actually, so the reviewed is overall 61. That's the total reviewed in that month. The actual average last month for payment was below 50 total days. It was somewhere around 45. We have 45 business days. So that's consistently been trending down as well.
I have to believe that 49 claims received in a month is maybe an all-time low.
I don't really know that. It seems like it probably could be.
At least in the last 20 years.
That's probably true. That is probably true. But we also had 178 in February, so which is quite a few. I think even in our high mark a few years ago, I think 250 to 300 was. I mean, that was a lot, like really slammed from. But we were frequently down below 100, and you see them generally close to the end of the quarter. Don't see them bump up and then go back down.
QM time.
Yep, exactly. All right, any other questions on any of this?
Is interest earned on the fund included in your revenue numbers?
So it should be that the interest earned on our fund is not.
Not much,
not
but
much, yeah.
I didn't see it reported under revenue.
We can include that in that from the treasurer's office. So
That's fine. I just want to make sure it was in the revenue.
yeah, it all goes back in there and it shows up. So, and I don't know exactly how they deal with it on the accounting side,
Yeah.
full sheet, but
You said the deductible was accounted for from the difference between the amount approved and the amount reimbursed, correct?
correct, yeah.
Not from the review to approve.
No. So the review to approve time, some of those are just ones that fell over. So, we received them in the previous months or fiscal year and then didn't review them until this one. Because like I said, there's always like that kind of 2-month kind of sloping thing for how, they get entered into the system. I'm not a fan of exactly how it's done this way. But it's what we have right now. It still works, it functions. We are working on, methods in the new database to improve how we're able to post these numbers.
Well, I guess I do have a couple of questions or comments about the ending fund balance, and maybe you can educate me or anyone else that might have the question is, how high can this number get? And what happens to it?
Are you talking legally or politically? These are two separate
Well,
questions. So legally speaking,
It's not part of the general fund, right?
no, it never reverses the general fund from a legal perspective. That number could be $150 billion and it will not go back or revert to the general fund. It will require a completely separate legislative proposal approved inside of approved by both houses and the Senate. That to occur. Politically speaking, I was here in 2015 when there was the potential for that to be rated. And actually worked on the tax amnesty, which was the kind of carrot to get away from that. And at that point, I believe the fund was approximately 125 or 130 million when they were looking into that. So potential, sure. Other states, they do have that issue as well, some more frequent than others. It seems like Illinois gets rated every other year. Or every 3 years, they're looking to take a hit. Some are not very surprised, but that's amazing. That'll happen. But
So hard to believe it, yeah.
yeah. So in Wisconsin, I think it happened frequently. It hurt them pretty substantially. So they found this.
Like I know in Pennsylvania, for example, it can be borrowed from,
Yeah,
but they've never paid any back, but they borrowed from it a few times.
yeah, no, it's
Is that a clause with Indiana?
no. So that was, it again, predates me in Foundation Fund. It was established as a trust fund, and because it's established as a trust fund, they are not allowed to dip into it that way. It's wholly contained, no reversions back to the general fund or any other fund. The only things that could be dealt with right now under the law falls into your guys' hands. You're the ones that actually can do anything other than, our daily course of things, and some of that requires statutory revisions. So,
There's no conspiracy going on behind the wall.
no,
Let's build this up so we can take $100 million from.
no, this is
Nobody
not,
will say,
it's not going to go to the major so that's definitely, unless, something comes up right now, like I said, it all, the only thing that the state can use it for is specifically what's listed in the purposes. Yeah.
well, that was my understanding. I guess I just wanted to hear you say that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. The agency doesn't get to keep anymore. We're still capped at the 11% revenue.
But 11% of 150.
No, it's 11% of revenue. So we're only getting 11% of whatever comes in, not of what's in there. So regardless of what happens to that bottom line, yeah, we are capped. So this year would have been 4.6, roughly 4.8 million. Would have been the 11%. So that's what cap is as far as agency expenses. And it can only be used for petroleum based program stuff. We can't use it for water or I don't know, something that air wants to do. So
Well, we're, a year or two into your tenure and, this kind of shakeup. How do you feel like things are going?
Overall, I feel like we've made a lot of headway with the overall big picture. There are some things that we're still fine tuning. As some of you know, I feel like we were really making a lot of headway until the pandemic hit. And then we got caught with, people leaving right during the hiring freeze, a lot of people retired. And it really slowed us up quite a bit, and prevented us from, kind of kicking over on a lot of these changes that we were making and the progress we were making. I think we still have the plan. We're still working on that plan. And we're still making headway. It's just a little bit slower than I would have liked, to be honest with you. But we're gonna get there. It's gonna happen. I don't have any issues that's, otherwise. We're not quite where I would want to be at this particular point, but it's again for understandable reasons I can't be outside of my hands. So definitely always looking for ways to improve. We've worked with several people on the board and in the audience on helping us with some of these issues that they see, not just related to ELF changes, just related to the program as it is as a whole. And ways to make that better and improve it for everybody. So we still are pushing forward with a lot of those, and we're doing what we can right now. Sometimes we haven't worked on the bureaucracy. Sometimes things just take longer than they should, just because you're waiting on different rules, you're waiting on different guidance, you're waiting on different people to approve different things. And sometimes they approve it and say, oh, it's and it sets you back a little bit. It's frustrating, but it's just the world we live in.
Well, I would say that, I've seen a lot of improvement, from my end and what I do day to day. From where we were probably a year or two ago. So,
I appreciate that, and a lot of that is, again, I really think a lot of that has to do with staffing. We built up really fast, and now we're kind of missing and losing a couple more people, but we're kind of, we brought on, I think, 10 or 12 people within a 2 or 3 month period after the hiring freeze was over and got them all in and trained, so that was very helpful. Unfortunately, like I said, we've lost a few of those now, scale back up, but.
well, from a consulting end, it is a little bit of a different world, and I hear about some of those individual complaints, I'm sure you guys do too.
Yeah.
I get copied on a lot of letters and, they get copied back from you guys on some of those letters, and I'm trying to make sense of them, and, overall, I don't have a lot of specific complaints, but I know that there's still some consultants out there that do, and I think the most helpful thing would be to answer them honestly and as more direct as you can, rather than in general terms.
Right.
And I see that sometimes, and that's what gets other consultants, I think, frustrated.
And I understand that. I completely understand that with the, kind of generality of some of these responses, but, kind of explain that, I'm sure you get it too. I mean, we're issuing hundreds and hundreds of these letters a week. It's really, we're already pushed for resources. It's difficult for us to take the time and effort and apply that to every single individual letter that's needed. That being said, when we do receive this feedback, we are constantly working with our legal staff and other folks to update our templates and make them easier understood, be a little bit more specific where we can, just to try to guide people in the right direction, while still allowing us to, like I said, get as many of these out as we possibly can. So, maybe guidance is the right answer. I don't really know the answer to that at the moment, but it's definitely something that, we're willing to work at. I'm not opposed to anything, but it can be a single help, so.
Well, everybody's under time constraints, but
Yep.
the more helpful and direct conversations you can have, even if it's just picking up the phone or a quick email, is I think we can help make your job easier, I think, as consultants.
Okay,
So
I appreciate
I
that.
welcome that.
Right, anything else? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Yes, thank you. So to Jason's point, I mean, the fund looks very healthy. You guys are doing a great job with your administration of it. And maybe to a point where it could get too healthy. And so I was curious if there's any thought about, adding above ground storage tanks at bulk facilities to it. The fuel that goes into those tanks is also probably pays the 1 cent per gallon, and it goes to ag and commercial sites. So I was just curious what items thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, as far as the agency, I mean, I have thoughts. I've got plenty of them. As far as that goes, we're willing to do whatever gets put into the legislation and supported by you all and regulated community. My personal opinion is I want the money to go back into the industry. That's where it belongs. That's what it's, perhaps that includes ASTs. I don't really know. I know that's been an idea that's been floated several times. And Chris is going to talk a little bit later about some of things that IFA is going to be looking at doing or potentially looking at doing. So I absolutely think that that's something that we've discussed and internally, just because we've heard it brought up several times in the past, we've had some internal discussions about from a regulatory perspective what that looks like and kind of what things we need, what's missing, just so that we're not caught off guard and we're ready to go if something like that does happen.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Yep, thanks.
Yeah, this is Tom Navarre. I know in the past, we've talked about expanding what the fund will cover, and especially now with it being very flush, and it's probably going to continue to grow. On top of what Trout said, are we looking at other things that we can use? And I know it would take legislative and so forth to get that done, but how do we go about proceeding with that, or getting this started?
Sure. So there are a couple different avenues. Again, Chris is going to talk a little bit about that from IFFA's perspective. From Ivan's perspective, we're not going to be putting forward a lot of this because we don't want it necessarily to be our ideas. We don't want to tell you, the FAB, or the regular community, how you all should be spending this money. Right? We'll be there to help and support where we can and put resources where we can to, you know, make sure things go off the trail well. But it's not really our role at this point to make a bunch of other mandates for how the fund should function and what other things you should be paying for. So, you know, that's kind of all I really can say about that at this point. You know, like I said, I've got plenty of different ideas. I can tell you what other people might want to do. But you know, I think it's really for you all out there that they're going to do this on a day-to-day basis. You know, with the regulators, we kind of want to stand out.
Seems like the general consensus is that the fund is going to continue to grow, particularly with R2 and the way closures are being applied now. I can only see this fund growing more and more, so it seems like the board probably needs to start addressing. That's some concerns with the industry on how the money's being spent, because R2 is just going to close sites more and more.
Right. And there's one particular item, I think, Tom, you and I have talked about this in the past, that really would just fall on you guys for approval through a rule amendment. So we firmly believe that it's within our authority under current health, if you all approve it, to do pay some of the expenditures for redevelopment costs that Tom had talked about, which is leaving contamination site, paying for disposal and potentially dewatering of contaminated soils for eligible reasons. We believe that that's something that would fall under rulemaking privileges and wouldn't require additional legislation. So
Even after the ERC is gonna apply,
correct.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So you know, 10, 15, whatever years down the road, it's a contaminated soil still there. I mean, there's some caveats to that, obviously, you know, but yes, it wouldn't matter whether the ERC was there or not.
And we're talking about the old incident number in the ERC, not higher levels and the new incident number starting over. You're talking about going back and opening that
Yep.
incident number back up.
Yeah, correct. So it's been there for, like I said, it's been there for 10 years, and Tom wants to go put a new tank in the ground and has to dispose of that soil. It's all eligible, and you know, that initial release 10 years ago was eligible. You know, I think that we could put language into the rule that would allow for reimbursement of disposal. For those
Well,
two.
I've seen that in their development, and I've seen tank owners like Tom, you know, go ahead and put the bill
Right.
to make it happen. So I know that they would welcome it.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, that's one of the ideas I think that was talked about in the last session that would not require a percentage change, but pretty much the rest.
To address what Nevis brought up, I think Chris is going to talk about some proposed legislation for health coming up
Yep.
still today, so.
Right, if we're good on that part, I'll go to the agency updates or agency activities, if that's okay. So just three main things I wanted to talk about. First one, I think I've already mentioned. Staffing. We were just getting to a point, it's kind of like, it's like Goofy in the basement with the pipe. You fix up one spot and then it starts leaking somewhere else and again and again and again. That's kind of where we are. I think at this point, the only group that's really fully staffed is Tom's UST compliance group. So we're now short a couple of project managers, we're short 2 to 3 claims reviewers, and also looking at retirement of 1 or 2 coming up here pretty shortly. So we're rapidly trying to fill those spots and people trained up so that we have this little lag as we could possibly create. So it's going to bear with us on that. The ELF audit, the draft report and the audit itself is complete. The draft report is currently in-house at IDEM under review. And once we do that, we will coordinate again with Pinnacle, who is one of the auditors performing it, and get a final report done. I anticipate that being done before our next meeting, having that after published. I'm not going to talk about a bunch of the details right now until at least we have the final report in, so that could change. I will talk about broadly speaking, in particular comparing it to the 2016 audit. Those that remember that one, they were forecasting 10 years out that the fund was not viable, meaning it would have been a negative balances in 10 years. That's no longer the case. I think it's kind of obvious from the last couple of times we've met. The fund will not have a negative balance 10 years out. And they also forecast growth in conjunction with continued reduction of revenue. Again, somebody in the industry, not really a big surprise. As you know, more electric vehicles, more fuel efficient vehicles, we're going to continue to see a little bit of a drop. Talking to Chris a little bit about this, you know, anticipating what the most recent price hike on gas is going to do to revenues, we can anticipate, but we only know it's going to go down by how much do. The last time they increased the diesel tax by a dime, we saw a year-on-year 5% decrease immediately, and then another, I think, 2 to 3% after that. I don't anticipate this being as bad, but I would anticipate that to definitely reduce our revenue next year. Other than that, I mean, I think the fund audit overall is very positive, very good. We started the last one, I think there were 25 or 27 audit recommendations, and this one there were 7. Most of which have already been planned, either in rule amendments, updating our guidance, or you know, with you know, changing around our internal structure to make some of these things happen. So like I said, I look forward to getting that out, hopefully in the next couple of months before our next meeting, give you guys plenty of time to review and ask any questions. ELF rule, we are still, we're making some changes internally, trying to prep it to get sent to the Office of Management Budget. The reason why we're spending a little bit more time internally is because once it gets sent over there, we want to make sure that it goes over and gets approved back. Because it's going to take them a long time for them to review it and do everything. And the last thing we want is for them to burn a bunch of time, have it sent back saying, make these changes, then send it back, and then say, well, there's not the changes we want, that kind of thing. We want to eliminate that back and forth. So we're trying to front load this as much as possible to send them what we think is going to get approved on that first time. And then once we do that, you know, we could talk about whether we want to go straight to second notice, whether we want to, you know, discuss some other parts of that. I think people different things have been brought up, but we're going to work group. It's kind of structuring and some of the cost patterns and stuff like that, which I think is a good idea. That's what that would take us. Other than that, you know, we're still trudging along with the Epic database. We have notification forms and registrations there. We have been going live on that for the last several months. Internally, the next phase is going to be an external portal. It's going to be kind of 2 parts. One part is going to be what we call the anonymous user journey. That's what someone that wants to go and see what's in there can go and see. And Colleen Reneker is here. She's going to do a little bit of a presentation on that. And then immediately, you know, kind of coupled with that, the next thing we're going to do is put up a web app form for notification forms that also can all be done online and submitted online and directly to them now, which I know is a bit of a headache. You know, I talked to Troy about this a lot. I completely agree with him. It is. So that will be something we'll definitely need a lot of effort on getting the notification forms submitted. And our ability to enter them into the database much more quickly, right? So and hand it over to Colleen. She can show you all kind of where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Doug. My name is Colleen Reneker. I'm the product owner for the Epic database. Epic being the environmental portal for Indiana citizens. So we do have a few slides up here. So instead of actually clicking through what we have available, I just put it in the form of a PowerPoint so that those online can see. And so hopefully we can step through this, and if you have questions, let me know. So this is, as Doug mentioned, what we call the anonymous user journey, the ability for somebody that is not logged in to just go into the Epic database and view the data that we have for our UST facilities. So this being the home landing page, you see our Epic logo there. Next slide, please. This is also available on the main landing page. These are just links to our ion.gov public websites to gain information on the underground storage tanks program, leaking USTs, excess liability trust fund, and our public virtual cloud. And so I will step through a few of the pieces of navigation we have available. Slide, please. We do have a contact page, so the ability to link straight to our petroleum contacts. On this page, you'll see information to contact compliance inspectors, those part of the petroleum section, ELF claims, as well as notification form contacts, and a contact for questions regarding the Epic database. So back here at our landing page, I'm gonna step through, you'll see there in the center, we have 3 cards. One of them, the first one being a link to our underground storage tank facility search. The one in the center has an Access Indiana logo. There's a little coming soon at the bottom. So this is the part Doug was talking about, the ability to log in as an authenticated user. This will show the ability to view a dashboard with your facilities, see your pending transactions, submit a notification form. So that's kind of the next phase of the portal. So right now, there's no functionality there. And then that third card on the right there is the ability to report a leak. So there are some instructions there. It'll show you the state form that is needed for release reporting. And then clicking that green button, slide please, will bring up an email in the user's default email application already addressed to our leaky UST email box. Instructions on how to find that form, attaching that form, and the ability to just hit send and get that release reported. Slide please. So now I will step through that first card I talked about, the view US underground storage tanks in Indiana. And clicking that green button takes you into our search. So this is our main search page for searching UST facilities. And so this is a list of all of our UST facilities in the state of Indiana, whether they're closed or active. This main page just shows some basic information, the facility ID, facility name, address, tank owner, and status. There are a few different navigation pieces I'll step through. First, I'll look at there's a search bar up in the right. Please. And so just typing in a random number here, I chose 555, filters down those search results. So now we're seeing facilities that have a 555, whether it's in the facility ID, the name, the address, tank owner, or other facility attributes. Slide please. More specific search is going to show, like I put in Maine here. And so we have that asterisk, this Maine up in the search bar. And so that now is looking for any facility that has the word Maine as a return result. We also, all of these columns have the ability to be sorted. So the default sort is by facility name alphabetically. We can also sort by facility ID, slide please. So we can do that in ascending or descending order. Right? And also in this view, I just sorted by the tank owner. So any of those columns can be sorted. We can also further refine that search to look a little bit closer for a specific facility. Slide. So here I've added in the search bar asterisk Lafayette. So now we're seeing that we've had 9 results for facilities that are on Main Street in Lafayette. And so now, slide please. I've narrowed down this search in the search bar, entered in 50001, a newer facility. And so we see we have 2 results that that match this number, but what I'm looking for is that facility ID 50001. The view, the blue view button on the left will open those facility details. Slide. So this is the opening page of our facility details. We have those green icons at the top. We'll let the user know the agency interest ID they're looking at, the facility ID, and the facility status. The blue banner that's in the middle, we can see our facility name. And then on the right, we have view location on map. So if we click that button, it brings up a modal that'll show the location of this facility. If we have the latitude and longitude of the facility, that's the point that it's showing us on the map. And then if we do not have those fields, it'll show us the facility address. Okay. And so all within this page, we can see additional facility information, facility address, telephone number, that long. Slide please. We also have our facility type, any parcel numbers associated with this facility. We have facility roles. So facility roles will include tank owner, tank operator, property owner, any interested parties, any certified contractors, facility contacts. So this grid just shows some of that information with a basic effective date of ownership, the name, a telephone number, and the owner ID number. Those blue links associated with the role will open up detail page for those. So we click on the tank owner, we see our facility role details. So now we're looking at the tank owner, we still have our green cards at the top, shows which facility we're looking at. Our blue banner will tell us the name of this entity, that it's the tank owner. And then this page will give us information about the business details, the business ID with SOS. And contact information associated with that tank owner. And then telephone number, address. And then any financial responsibility information. So this will keep track of if ELF has been selected as an FR mechanism for this tank owner for this facility or any other FR mechanism they've registered. Fine. And so now this is taking us back to our facility details. You can see we're back at that facility roles grid. Fine. And also available is information about our tanks and our compartments at this facility. So again, those blue links will take us into details about either the tank or the compartment. So we can take a look at tank 1 details. We still have information about which facility we're at. We have our tank name, which is shown as the facility number -1. And then the tank details page will show us our UST number, our tank status, installation date. More information on manufacturer, model, date brought into use, number of compartments, construction material, as well as secondary containment. And then within each tank, we can see which compartments are within that tank. That blue link for the compartment is clickable, so we can navigate into the compartment details. And so here, our compartment name is the facility ID -1 for tank, C1 for compartment 1. And so here, similar to the tank screen, we can see information about this compartment that we currently have on in our database. So here we can see the substance, the compartment number. We can see the date of installation, date brought into use, the capacity, whether the compartment is manifolded, compartment status. And then more attributes for the tank, the compartment sum or containment sumps, the release detection, corrosion protection, spill prevention, overfill prevention. And then any tanking or piping information that we have for this specific compartment. But here's just some more piping data. So back to the compartment section, I'm just going to step through some of our navigation options. So we've looked through our search function, we've looked through the facility, through the tank, we're all the way into the compartment. And so you'll see the blue banner near the top of the screen has what we call breadcrumbs. So these breadcrumbs will show the user where you are and where you've been. Like this. So it's just a zoomed in version of those breadcrumbs. You can see it says you're here. You can see on the right, we see compartment 1C1. Before that, we were looking at the tank. Before that, we were looking at the facility, search UST facilities, and the home page. So all of these breadcrumbs are clickable. So at any point, a user can go back to a previous point in the record to look at the data. So I think here I'm going to click on the facility breadcrumb. Slide, please. And that takes us back to our main facility details page. A few other navigation options. The drop down that I have shown here says I want to already highlighted to view all facility details. So we can jump to certain parts of the facility record if we don't want to look at all of that data all at once. So say we just want to look at facility. And so you can see here under that middle blue banner, this is just showing us the facility roles for this facility, and it functions the same way. We can use those links to get into those details. And so back here at our facility details page, on the left side, we have kind of a menu panel. We have some of those public links for the UST, linking UST and web pages. We also have a few more navigation options. Slide please. And so you'll see that I've expanded the facility roles, and so that is showing all the facility roles at this facility. So if we were to say, click on just that property owner in that left menu panel, slide please. Then what we've done here is we've navigated just to that property owner. Slide please. I've expanded in the left menu panel here. We can do the same thing for our tanks and click those to look at the tank details. Slide please. And for compartment details. Slide please. And so we can use those breadcrumbs or back arrow, get back to our UST facility search. This is just the basic UST facility search. And then we also have the option to get back to that home main landing page. We can use our breadcrumbs at the top to select home, or we can select our logo and title environmental portal for Indiana citizens, and that will return us back to our home landing page. Like this. So that was a quick view of one facility that would be available through this anonymous user journey. The idea is that this will be available to just the general public to come in and see the data that we currently have in our database. I know that one of the main questions we're going to receive is when will this be live? The idea is in the next few weeks, we will be working with a small group of kind of early adopters to get people engaged, involved in seeing this anonymous user journey, and making sure that is functioning the way we want it to function, and then in providing the value that we want it to provide before our next step being the authenticated part for user login for Access Indiana. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so before I answer first, just kind of highlighting where I see some of the benefit, even at this early stage, is this is the first time where really our data has been able to be viewed or will be able to be viewed by the external community at all. We're told that then to kind of slog through how many notification forms have been submitted on the VSC and how many things of that sort. So this will be a much easier way for, like I said, the regulated community and agencies to be able to log on there and view each facility, see what's there in a really quick way. The next step again is kind of a web-based application for submitting notification forms, which will streamline it further. And then the final step, once everything is up and running the way it's supposed to, whenever you log on to the verified portal, you're just going to be submitting changes. So whatever is changed to the facility is all you're going to submit. That's all. Everything else will remain the same as the database, and should be pretty streamlined for everybody to be able to see that inside of their own dashboard. So this is like just kind of the initial step we're taking, and you're looking forward to working with a couple of folks we're reaching out to fine tune some of the process to see what we can do to maybe improve before you hit go live on that part. Are there any other questions? Go ahead and throw it to Chris.
Good.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Financial Insurance Board. My name is Chris Braun. I'm a partner with Blue Shadley, Ranger Braun, and for the last almost 30 years, General Counsel to the Indiana Petroleum Marketers Association. And one of the things I'd like to do today, we're at a good juncture to step back and figure out where were we, where are we now, where are we going with the Excess Liability Trust Fund. I think Doug and his team are far too modest in terms of the progress that's been made over the last 7 years. If you remember back in 2015, we had a discussion here at the Financial Insurance Board about the dire straits that the L Fund was in because of the cost of cleanup in Indiana. In 2015, the average across the country, average cleanup cost was less than $160,000. In Indiana, it was over $350,000. We were the third highest in the country in terms of our cost of closure, not because our soil and water are any different than anyone else's, but we needed some controls. And IDEN, to its credit, with the support of the Financial Insurance Board and members of the what is now the IFFA, commissioned outside audits to come in, and they were done both from an actuarial standpoint, management standpoint. And as Doug mentioned, there were about 25 different recommendations made in there to see where was the fund headed, because it was on an unsustainable path in terms of the cost being borne by it. So since 2016, the average cleanup cost nationally has stayed around $150,000. But from 2016 to 2018, as they were implementing these changes, we had the dubious distinction of being the most expensive place in the United States. We were over $520,000 per site, while the national average was $150,000. But they were in the process of turning the Titanic around to avoid the iceberg. And there were some costs along the way to get there. As of fiscal year 2020, they were under 300,000, and they continued to drop down. But to give you some comparison, Kentucky is 79,000, Illinois is 85, and Ohio is 117. So we still have a ways to go to get in line with our sister states. But let me tell you, that really have had a profound impact and help explain the questions raised earlier by Trout and Tom about how do we get to 148 million and where we're going from there. Is that they started with the low-hanging fruit, those sites that already been paid over $1 million in environmental cleanup expenses, and sites that have been going on for over 10 years. The next thing they tackled were some of the audit recommendations from the report. One was an evaluation of all claims for reasonableness and cost effectiveness. Two was improved loss prevention activity to prevent these situations from arising. And number three was to embrace more fully institutional controls on all those sites. They began an aggressive path forward in terms of getting sites closed out. In 2015, we had 783 active ELF sites. As of fiscal year 2021, we were down to less than half that at 275, and that number has continued to drop rapidly. As Doug indicated, we're in the 120 to 150,000, 120 to 150 new incidents a year, but those are being turned around and pushed forward on a more aggressive path to get them to closure more quickly. As a result, over the last 3 years, the ELF fund has run a very healthy excess balance. The last 2 years, it's on a pace that it's averaging almost $3 million a month. So about $36 million that we are in excess. And you look at the pattern of the last 3 years, it's very healthy. So we're, and this downward trend in claims all comes about because IDEM was willing to embrace these audit recommendations, and we're willing to implement the recommendations across the board. And some were painful, but they were necessary. And we're now reaping the benefits of IDEM's willingness to look in the mirror and say, what can we do better? And so we're currently at 148 million. At the current pace, we're going to be over 200 million in 2 fiscal years. And notwithstanding the fact that our friends over in the State House have plenty of money now and are figuring out ways to give it back to Hoosiers, we're not that far removed from where the temptation could be there to redeploy these dollars. If you use right now under the statute, we talk about a $25 million reserve, which is necessary. You have to keep in there. If you took about 3 years average of claims, which is about 15 million, rounded up, you're looking at about $73 million or about $70 million of reserves. So you have the statutory reserve plus 3 years of claims built into that. But over and above that, you're looking at $80 to $120 million of excess dollars available that you could redeploy into other purposes. And one of the things that the IFFA has been discussing internally, and we're going to be having a board meeting coming up here very soon, where we've been kicking around internally a number of proposals that would allow for us to redeploy these dollars to allow us to achieve more environmental cleanups, to allow us to expand the use of the fund. We would want to take care of some things that have been lingering. I think Trout mentioned the possibility of bulk plants being included. And obviously, we would not include refineries in that, but they're in the food chain of the delivery of petroleum from a terminal ultimately to a gas station from there. So there's things we're going to look at. And that may involve both legislative changes and rulemaking changes. And what we'd anticipate is that we would come back at our next financial assurance board meeting, and we will give to you and share with you where we see this going in terms of changes. We'll have specifics in there in terms of specific proposals, but also in how do we effectuate those changes. I think that the folks in Doug's department have maximized those changes that they can embrace as things currently stand. I think there's some more things we can do with some regulatory changes, cover some costs, whether it be at IDEM or with the private sector, to get even more cleanups done So we look forward to coming back, and whenever you have your next meeting, which we anticipate, we'll have our legislation ideas pulled together here in the next 30, 60 days and be in a position to talk in a more meaningful way, with the idea that we can then get active and be ahead of the curve for this next session coming up, which is obviously a budget session. And we're excited about it. And we applaud the tremendous strides that have made over the last 7 years. They weren't painful. I know there were some grumbling going on about sites being closed too quickly. There were complaints about reimbursement levels, et cetera. But it was painful and necessary to get to where we are now. And we're now in a very equal position relative to our sister states of having a very healthy balance, and then an operational balance going forward that looks to be a surplus as well. So I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions you might have, but that's our analysis of sort of where we were, where we are today, and where we're going with this surplus fund.
Thank you. I guess the few comments that I do have is, and I've said it before, sitting up here, that we always kind of look at the expense that Indiana had in environmental cleanups. Well, that wasn't necessarily every consultant and every site. And in some aspects, we decided not to say that Indiana maybe did it smarter or better than our surrounding states. But I think that's what are on the bridge today. So yeah, I guess I kind of welcome the changes, and we'll see where it leads us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I look forward to having an in-depth discussion at the next FAB meeting about specific proposals.
The next meeting, I think we talked about briefly, is December 15th. And again, would that be at 1:30, right?
Yeah, there are 1:30. Carla, do you know if we have, what room we have for the December meeting?
It's on the.
You don't have the room list, but it's either conference room A or conference room C, probably. This is conference room C, so it'll be in one of these rooms.
You say December 15th?
December 15th.
It's conference room A.
I guess, in talking to the rest of the board, we had the November option or December option, and the November option didn't work well for me, so that's why we decided to go with December. Next on the list is a chance for an open forum, or anyone else that would like to get up and address the board. Guess we don't have any.
I put them all to sleep. Jason, we do have 2 questions that are lined here. I can't hear them. Address those. The first one is how reasonable and cost effective is now increase, and if so, what is the decrease?
So it's a little bit hard to track. We don't track based on that. I will say this is purely anecdotal as leads to that. They do appear to be going down. We're seeing them less and less frequently, or I'm seeing them less and less frequently. I think some of that is attributed to what Jason was talking about being a little bit more clear about what the expectations are, what it means when we put this in the letter for this particular kind of thing. We're working a little bit more. So I think it was a little bit of us being a little bit more forward and upfront on some of this communication and maybe digging in and being a lot more specific. I think some of it is also folks kind of getting into that adjustment and readjusting to a certain extent, kind of learning from us and us learning from them, and kind of the implementation of this overall.
And the second one is what percentage of claims now have a pre-approved scope of work?
So I remember the last time I had checked, we were somewhere around 20 to 25%. And Jill is out. Yeah, so it was a few months ago, we were sitting right around 20 to 25% of those within quarterly monitoring things had scopes of work.
You seen that gone down or up? Or?
It's been going up. When we initially first started doing it, we hovered around 5%, I think, for several months, and then shot up to 10 or 15% for a while, and then finally broke point around that 25%.
I'm not sure if we ever got an answer, but I know we talked about it at the last meeting. We're going to address this direct about scope of
Yes.
works that were approved, and then denied costs once it came time.
Yes, I did. I did speak to Lisa about that. So I did you guys an answer in writing now. So just kind of, I guess, from that adding one more thing, just so you all know, I discussed it last time, and Jason was talking about moving away from time and labor for cost guidelines into full on task-based cost guidelines. That is the way that the current rule is formatted. That's the way that I plan to move forward. And that's the way that really when we're discussing that, that's kind of where we're headed. It was in the audit recommendations last year. I can tell you it was in the audit recommendations again this year. But it's also something that really, I think will put us ahead. There aren't very many states that do it like this. I think it's a very positive thing. So it's basically lump sum payment based on task. So it should be pretty easy for everybody to get in and know what's expected and what's going to be reimbursed. We're not going to be haggling over every line item of time and labor. We've established what that value is to us and what a reasonable value of that is in the external community, and that's what we're going to pay. So, all right, any other questions after that? Thanks.
Thank you. Well, with that, I just need a motion to adjourn. I guess we don't need a second. Everybody say aye. All right, thank you, everybody.
You looked at Nancy, Nancy smiled, and you just threw it back.